let's talk about limits. Limits are really the bridge from precalculus to calculus. But regardless of when you're teaching it, it's important to highlight to your students and to yourself that limits really begin a new phase of mathematics. Everything up to now has been primarily algebraic and computational. From the most basic pre-algebra to rational, log, or polynomial functions, we have primarily focused on algebraic techniques that we're applying to more and more computationally difficult problems. This is not to say that there's no conceptual understanding in algebra, but the focus has still primarily been computational. Limits begin to shift that idea. In fact, most of the techniques we'll discuss with limits are very simple. You could probably teach a 9th grade student to successfully solve most limit problems. What we need to focus on is helping our students to understand what limits mean and why we do them. Limits are the introduction to calculus, a subject much less about computational difficulty and much more about conceptual understanding. The first question is, what is a limit? At its most basic, a limit is asking the question, what is a function doing as x approaches some specific value? So when we say, what is the limit as x approaches 2 of a function, we're saying, what value are the y values approaching of that function as x approaches 2? Now the first thing your students are likely to say is, oh, easy, just plug in 2. And this is where the conceptual understanding of limits becomes very important. Because with a limit, we don't really care what the value of the function is at 2. We care about the value of the function as x gets really, really close to 2. So the value of the function at 2 could be something totally crazy, or could be undefined, and that won't necessarily affect the value of our limit. The best way that I've found to introduce these ideas is graphically. Let's take a look at a graph of a line that's just missing one point at x equals 2. And let's talk about the limit as x approaches 2. So everywhere on this graph we just have a normal line, except right here at 2 where suddenly the value jumps to 2 billion. So what's the value of the limit as x approaches 2? Is it 2 billion? Well, no. Because you look at the graph and you see that even though the point 2, 4 is actually missing from this graph, there's a hole there, the value of the limit is asking what value are we approaching as we get really, really close to 2. Not at 2, but really close to 2. And so if you look just a little less than 2, just a little more than 2, we're clearly approaching the y value of 4, so our limit would actually be 4. The next important thing for us to consider as teachers is that there are two-sided and one-sided limits. Now, as we're teaching our students this concept for the first time, we're probably going to focus only on two-sided limits, but that means we need to stress to our students how important it is that the value approach from both sides, not just one side. Consider the limit as x approaches 2 of this piecewise function. Now, if you just look at x equals 2, we have no issue substituting that. And if you look at numbers slightly smaller than 2, it seems obvious that the limit is going to be 1. But since it's a limit, we have to care about not only numbers slightly smaller, but also numbers slightly larger. And when we look at the slightly larger numbers, it goes to this second part of our piecewise function. And unfortunately, that gives us a completely different value. So since we have a different value on the left side and the right side, it really doesn't matter what the value is at 2. And therefore, this limit does not exist. Now that we've seen a case where a limit does not exist, let's take a minute and dive in and look at really what happens when a limit doesn't exist. Again, our focus here is not going to be on just determining whether the limit exists or not, but really determining why it doesn't exist and what can we still learn from that situation. Let's take a look at the limit as x approaches 0 of 1 over x. Now the function 1 over x is undefined at x equals 0, but that doesn't necessarily mean that our limit will not exist. What matters here is that if we look at numbers slightly smaller than 0, we're getting a more and more negative value. And if we look at numbers slightly larger than 0, we're getting a more and more positive value. In other words, on the left side we're approaching negative infinity, and on the right side we're approaching positive infinity. And since those are not the same, obviously our limit does not exist, and everything seems fine. Where this idea gets more interesting and confusing is if we look at the limit as x approaches 0 of 1 over x squared. Now this time, the value of the function is approaching positive infinity from both the left side and the right side. So does that mean that this limit still does not exist? Or does somehow the answer equal infinity because it's giving us the same value on both sides? Well, confusingly, the answer is yes. So this is where we have to go back and really think about how did we define a limit from the beginning. A limit is the value a function approaches as x approaches some number. And that key word there is value. Is infinity a value? No. Infinity is an idea, right? Infinity is the idea that you can name any number and I can name a bigger one. But it's not actually a number. So when we say that a limit is the value the function approaches, if it's not approaching a specific value, then the limit does not exist. So technically, yes, this problem, the limit does not exist. However, will you see the answer infinity sometimes? Absolutely. So infinity or negative infinity as an answer to a problem is kind of like a special case of does not exist. The limit does not exist, but we know some extra information. We know that even though it doesn't exist, both sides are going to infinity. So by telling you that the answer is infinity, we're saying, okay, we understand that it doesn't exist, but there's more information than just that, and so we're sharing it. So it's kind of confusing, and it's something that will be difficult for your children, your students to really understand, but it's worth really diving into that idea that infinity is a special case of does not exist, and really explaining to them why that is. Okay, so we learned what a limit is, and we've dived into some of the intricate details of these problems. Now, let's take a look at some of the techniques that we can use to solve limit problems. Most of these are algebraic ideas that we already know, just used in a slightly different way. First, let's take a look at a limit where we can factor and simplify to evaluate the limit. Take a look at this function, f of x equals x squared plus 5x plus 6 over x squared minus 4. Now, if we take the limit as x approaches negative 2 of this function, by substitution you can see that we end up with 0 over 0, which is obviously not good. So then we go back and we say, well, what else can we do? Well, one thing we can try to do is we can factor this. And now you can see that if we factor this, we can actually cancel out a common factor, and we end up with x plus 3 over x minus 2. So now we can actually substitute negative 2 into our equation, and we get the actual value of our limit, negative 1 over 4. Now, most students won't have any difficulty with the mechanics of this technique, but it's worth taking a minute and discussing with your students where they've seen this before and what this really is. The function f of x here is a rational function, and x equals negative 2 is actually a hole or removable discontinuity in the graph. And so if they remember back to what they learned in algebra, well, they'll remember that the original function and our simplified function are identical everywhere except at x equals negative 2. Our simplified function goes right through there while our original function has a hole. So if we think about now that idea with limits, we can see that we simply already knew what was going to happen here. That point where we had our removable discontinuity is the limit that we were looking for. Help your students to recall this knowledge and use it to better understand limits now. Next, let's take a look at a limit where rationalizing can help us. If f of x equals x minus 9 over the square root of x minus 3, well, let's take a look at the limit as x approaches 9 of f of x. Now, once again, we see we get 0 over 0, which of course is not good. So we need to come up with another strategy. Now, your students should have already learned the technique of rationalizing, so let's try to apply that to this problem. If we multiply the numerator and denominator by the conjugate of square root of x minus 3, which is the square root of x plus 3, we end up with x minus 9 times the quantity, the square root of x plus 3 over x minus 9. And of course, this allows us to simplify the x minus 9s, giving us just the square root of x plus 3. Now that we've simplified our problem, it's easy to see that the value of the limit is actually 6. All right, now that we've seen this technique, let's talk about what really happened here. What we originally have looks like a rational function, but it's really not. It's really a radical function with a removable discontinuity at x equals 9. We're just trying to evaluate the function at that removable discontinuity. So this rationalizing technique allows us to do that. But what if I told you that this problem could actually be factored just like the last one? All right, instead of multiplying by conjugates, try to think of x minus 9 as a difference of squares. Well, if you do that, then you can see that you can factor x minus 9 as the square root of x plus 3 times the square root of x minus 3. And now if we put that into our function, you can see that we can easily simplify and end up with the same thing that we ended up with from rationalizing. This is just a different and kind of unique way of thinking about these problems and may make more sense to some of your students. In any case, it's an interesting connection between rationalizing and some of the other ideas that we've seen in the past. One last thing to mention here is about limits at infinity. Limits at infinity don't have to be difficult. The key here is to connect what your students already know to limits. Limits at infinity are essentially end behavior. Your students already learned about end behavior with rational functions and horizontal asymptotes and polynomials. They know about end behavior. So if you make that connection between limits at infinity and end behavior, that will really make those sorts of problems much easier and will allow you to focus on those few unique, challenging problems, like when a function might be oscillating.